Okay, as Alistair kindly said, Graham Williamson, Gama Aviation. I think I was asked to speak. I've done 10 AOCs in my lifetime. We currently have 5 in Gama in multiple locations, so I'm a very complex customer, and we have some representatives here from some of the authorities and also a couple of operators, so a good mix. If everyone could just say who they are so I can write it down.
Yeah, well, I'm Paul Doherty. I'm with ACASS. I'm the managing director of the Irish team, focusing mainly on aircraft management based on the EJ registry.
I'm Lincoln Gomez with Gomez Coiffe Law in Aruba, and I work with both the Registry of Aruba and operators in setting up and maintaining AOCs.
Good evening, David Colindres from the San Marino Aircraft Registry. I am the president, and I've been in charge of the registry for the past 12 years.
Good evening, Jorge Colindres from the Registry of Aruba. He happened to be my son, so don't get confused, okay?
And good afternoon, my name is Paul Stevens. I'm the head of flight operations for the Civil Aviation Authority of San Marino.
Good afternoon, David from Langenbergh, Luxaviation. We have 11 AOCs worldwide, of which 1 in San Marino and a couple somewhere else.
Thank you, David. And so, I mean, just starting in very simple terms, when I joined a million years ago, the industry, there was a sort of civil aviation, FAA, Europe, maybe Bermuda and Cayman were around. Today, there seems to be quite a lot of choices, and I think our industry is all about choice. So I have customers come to me in different jurisdictions, in different parts of the world, as does Paul, and clearly you have many, David. Why would we choose your registry, or what do you think are the key things that they should look for in a registry? Maybe start with Paul.
For me, I think there's no one best registry. I think it really depends on choosing the right registry for the right owner. I think they spoke earlier about choosing the right operator, but I think it goes the same for registry. So with ACASS, we have an Irish, Canadian, and also a San Marino. I think if you're going to fly commercially around Europe, I think Ireland is the choice that we would put forward, particularly with our free circulation within domestic UK. And then if you want to fly in Asia, Africa, Middle East, we would put forward the T7 registry. And then obviously, if you're Canadian operations, we would put forward the Canadian operator.
And maybe for Jorge, I know you founded the registry, and we have a business in Sharjah, in Dubai. T7 is extremely popular in that region and in other parts of the world. What's the reason, do you think, for that success?
Graham, I'm going to defer the question to my son David, but basically it was an idea. Aruba was growing a lot, and we needed a second alternative, and we basically went into San Marino, and David will explain what he created, in San Marino, which is something truly special.
Thank you. So, like my father said, 12 years ago, we needed to expand our horizons. Back in those days, there were the traditional ABCs. It was Aruba, Bermuda, and Cayman. And then you had the Isle of Man join the market. However, up to this point, they only do private. And then it happened that the group in those days, Aruba, which I was involved before San Marino, we had a incoming request for people interested in doing AOCs, but no one was doing AOCs from the traditional 3 FCAR registries, which I just mentioned. And then my father one day decided that we were going to step into this business, but we needed to do it the right way. So actually our first client was Comlux. Right. Comlux was the first AOC in Aruba, which we certified. And then once Comlux was certified in Aruba, and then a few years later, we executed the contract with the government of San Marino. We saw that there was a large interest in operators, moving into the traditional private operations into the commercial aspect. Why? Because we had the service, but the service was mostly for the private operators. So what we did created a hybrid model in San Marino. where, you know, today we are popular for many, many reasons. And one of those is we're reliable. In this industry, you need to be able to have expertise, you need to have competence, you need to have support, you need to have global reach. We have more than 80 inspectors around the world to be able to regulate and oversee and service the industry, because it's a huge responsibility. You know, an AOC, I mean, you talk about registries, okay, it's simple to register an aircraft, you know, you register an aircraft, but then the responsibility from the authority, you know, to regulate all this. We have 22 AOCs, so it's a big responsibility once the aircraft is registered, once the aircraft are certified into these air operating certificates.
So actually, David, so the Aruban registry was your first registry that was the birthplace. And what's the fundamental difference between the Aruban and, for instance, San Marino? Why didn't you just expand Aruba?
Let me answer that one. We are still expanding Aruba, Graham. What basically happened is you need to understand that the concept of foreign AOC never existed. Mm-hmm. So it's something that we invented in-house. And we have to prove ourselves before the Air Safety Committee in Brussels in order to demonstrate that the certification package was credible, because it was something really, truly innovative. Aruba is still growing. We have a number of, you know, AOCs. We have large operators like, you know, Colindres is still our oldest client, Global Jet Luxembourg, Falcon Wind from Abu Dhabi, Best Flight from Africa. So we're all expanding. But this is driven by the owner and the operator. Basically, they decide which country they're going to use for the AOCs. Like David says, we focus on the certification package, we focus on efficiency, and now we're up to a point that we can cherry pick the clients, because we have to protect our business model. At the end of the day, we need to be responsible to the operators and to the industry as well. So we have to maintain the standards. For instance, like San Marino and Aruba, they're both Category 1 by the FAA. Our TCOs are given very rapidly by EASA. The same when you apply for Parent C, you know, the Transportation Department in the US also will give us the permission right away. And we have a particular agreement with the US up to the 7th freedom of the air, which means that if you have an Aruban AOC, you can pick up passengers in the US and drop it in a third country without going to the home state. So we do all those things which a lot of countries don't do.
Thanks. And I guess, Paul, from your perspective, you're the guardian, particularly on the T7 registry, in terms of the safety, quality, compliance, the management system.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, I joined the registry 7.5 years ago, having been 20 years with the UK CAA. And coming from that dynamic of the oil tanker approach to the San Marino, which was multiple speedboats darting around, is one way I like to describe it. Was a bit of a cultural change for me to come from that big bureaucratic system of the UK CAA into this very dynamic, flexible system that San Marino had developed. And I must admit, it took me a little while to adapt. But now I have adapted, I'm very excited about the prospects of what it gives. I'm seeing the sort of the questions to the Slido coming up on the screen here. You know, flexibility is probably one of the big things we have. There are very little constraints that we have put upon us because we're in control of our own destiny. And whilst there is a regulatory compliance side to what we do, and when we have our pre-application meetings with prospective operators, that's made very clear right at the very beginning that San Marino is not an easy place to come and get an AOC. But if you come to San Marino and get an AOC through being compliant, the service and the flexibility you get in return gives you unlimited prospects with the business that you can develop. So yeah, it was a big culture shock for me, but I'm now 7.5 years into it, and I'm bought out. You know, it's won me.
And Lincoln, so your customers, you're obviously representing clients and you're making recommendations, and obviously Aruba is part of in your DNA. Do you have a range of other solutions for them, or is Aruba really the go-to registry?
No, I think in all AOCs, not only in Aruba, but also when we're looking at San Marino, I think we're looking at one, what are the missions, and two, the relationships. We have loads of information on the websites. I mean, all the forms you can think of, all the information is right there. But want to make it easier? Give us a call, let's have a chat. Tell us what you want to do, and I'll tell you, you know what, you should be talking to me, or maybe you should be talking to David. And you know, it's easier to have a chat, just face-to-face, sort it out, and then we can take the decision. I think it's that flexibility, rather than starting off trying to digest loads of information, and then realizing that this is not the place for me to be.
I think it's important, particularly in this forum, for me to sort of say other brands are available, much like the BBC. And I think, Paul, you're probably the most experienced of one of the newer AOCs in Europe under EASA supervision. So what are your experiences of the Irish Registry?
Yeah, look, I think when you set up an AOC, the biggest challenge is the post-holder requirements. It's not specific to Ireland, but it is a big challenge because you take on a lot of cost. Like we're probably at 9 or 10, going to be 10 post-holder roles by the end of the year. And when you start, that is somewhat of a barrier or a challenge to overcome. But I think once you get over that, particularly from our experiences, I find that we talk about flexibility a lot, but I find that my best understanding of flexibility is where the authority works with you, not basically you don't work for them, basically. So rather than policing, they're advising, and you're working towards what's the best way of satisfying all the regulations. And I find that is the bit that stands out from an operator point of view, where you get a better relationship with the authority.
And I think just going to change direction slightly now, because another question in the original setup for this panel was the newest AOC in town is also one of the oldest, which is the EASA AOC, which I believe, David, you have the second EASA AOC in Luxaviation.
That is correct. We have a license EASA AOC number 002.
Yeah, and maybe you could share your experience and the motivation.
That's complicated. I mean, you asked me politely to explain what is hell. We decided to go into the single EASA AOC project based on a good understanding and relationship with EASA, with Patrick Key when he was still around. It has many. There could be a lot of opportunities, but it's a very complicated exercise. The reason for that is simple, because people out of Cologne and the way EASA works is very clear now for us that there is a total lack of understanding what business aviation is. I think we all know that there is no Part 135 in Europe, and that is really something that is missing. The oversight is enormous. First of all, it was an existing AOC out of a national authority. For us, in our case, it was the Portuguese one. That had to be handed over to EASA, so the Portuguese authority first, they did a very strong, in-depth audit on us. And then the week after, EASA came in, and just to paint the picture of the complexity, on that first EASA taking over and their audit, we had like 31 findings that needed to be fixed. So it is complicated, but we also have good use of it, not really from a business case point of view and adding like a magnificent amount of aircraft on that AOC. But suddenly for us, it was a very good argument to go to our other national authority AOCs, EASA AOCs, telling them that we were doing this project, and suddenly the doors opened wide at local level, which is helping us there. So.
And I think many people here would agree that the Holy Grail has been for many years to have a single European AOC, an EU registration, in which we could all benefit from. Because the complication, I think you shared with me before, was an AOC is not an operating license.
Exactly, and we found out the hard way. So the goal was to have a single EASA AOC and to be able to put all our other AOCs under that EASA AOC. And then we really understood well what an operating license means. Because in the beginning, when EASA was explaining to us, all was fine, all was clear. We also had some legal people involved, and it was also interesting to understand the lack of understanding what an operating license is. But the day as an example, we moved one of our country's fleet to the EASA AOC, The same day we got a letter from a different department of that country, which was the Ministry of Finance and Taxes, telling us that we did not longer were fully compliant with an operating license requirements, and they were going to tax us big time. I mean, that was a fun exercise, so we could undo that within the day, actually, with the fine partnership of that local authority. So it's a very political game that's being played between the countries and EASA. So the difference is you need the operating license from the local country. Is a very simple reason for that. EASA is not a country. They do not exist. They can sit at the ICAO, but they're not part of any convention in that regard. So to operate commercially, you need to have your local country behind you, your local flag.
Thanks. I still think it's definitely something that we need to try and develop going forward to create that level playing field we've all sought for many, many years. Just going back onto the compliance side, I mean, one of the huge benefits with the registries represented here and also the Isle of Man, I know Simon's here, and Declan's here from the IAA as well, the CEO of the IAA, so if you want to talk about Ireland, Declan's here for a couple of days. One thing that's important is certification. So a lot of the drivers, when we meet a customer, they're buying an aircraft that's coming out of the US to be brought into Europe, so they want to be able to certify it. So perhaps, Paul, so you accept any certification in terms of STCs, etc., and crew licensing?
Yes, we're not constrained in the type certifications that we can accept. So UK, FAA, EASA, Transport Canada. All those type certifications are welcome on the San Marino Registrar. The same with crew licenses. We predominantly do not issue San Marino licenses. We validate the state of license issue. So again, accepting any ICAO Annex 1 state license is another flexibility we have. And that's particularly important perhaps when you're going from a transition from private into commercial. So you're bringing a private operation from another state, maybe even, and the crew are licensed in a different state coming to San Marino. There's not a massive change in that license, the state of license that would have to occur with that validation process. Certificate or regulatory-wise, again, because we're an independent state, we're not under the EASA regime of rules or the FAA. So we develop and generate our own rules based on being ICAO Annex 1 compliant. And however, we have the benefit of being able to select, perhaps from other lessons learned in other countries, what might be good, not only for the clients, but also for the regulator as well. And so we're very flexible in that way. And because we're, as I sort of described this as more of a speedboat than an oil tanker, if we need to make changes, if we need to bring in improvements to the way we work, we don't have a massive bureaucratic system sitting behind us that will slow that down. So we can be quite dynamic in the way we can change. And that, you know, there's evidence of that has happened in the past.
So I think simplicity and speed for the non-commercial or the hybrid AOCs, you have to ask the question, I think if I was a layman in the audience, why would people register their aircraft under EASA if they get all the benefits with T7 or Aruba without any oversight?
Graham, let me take that question. It's very simple. Being San Marino or Aruba, not being a member of the European Union, we don't enjoy, the cabotage rules, okay, for one. However, that's the only drawback. But if you want to operate internationally, we are an extremely viable option. We're extremely efficient, extremely credible. I mean, we have really, really expensive planes in the registries belonging to very important personalities around the world. And all the banks work with us when it comes to registering mortgages. So our credibility has been proven. We basically this business, I invented it 35 years ago. I mean, even though Bermuda existed and Cayman existed, but it was basically run by a government entity. We went and basically privatized the services. We talked to the Civil Aviation Authority and we said, listen, we will run your Civil Aviation Authority, we will bring it up to the highest standard ever possible. And that partnership has lasted with Aruba 30 years. And San Marino now, we're year 14. So, I mean, our credibility is our name. And we will not do anything to jeopardize our reputation or the reputation of the clients or the operation itself. And whoever is one of our clients, I mean, they're extremely happy. I mean, we have Dreamliner, 747-8, every single type. I mean, G700, they come to San Marino straight from the factory. I mean, so we have a tremendous lot of airplanes just, coming to our registries just because of the credibility. And we have something that people may not know. Our rules are simple because they make sense. They're done in plain English. Everybody can understand. Everybody exactly knows what they're looking for and what they need to do. And we don't sell a paper. You want to come to San Marino, you want to come to Aruba, I mean, these are the rules of the game. You have to go through a certification package. Yeah, we work fast because we're a private company, but we do it seriously. And that's where it comes flexibility and efficiency. And remember, we're not in the business of granting AOCs. We're not in the business of registering planes. Anybody can do that. All the countries in the world do it. We are in the business of creating experiences. When a client comes to us, we want them to take the experience back. And that experience needs to be good. It needs to be credible. It needs to be satisfactory. We will not accept anything less than giving our best. And the whole teams are like that.
Thanks. Just going back to Dave. Oh, sorry, please.
So I just wanted to add to that, or also, I mean, it's not only from the legal perspective, it's not only from the registry perspective, but it's also from the DCA, the Department of Civil Aviation. When a client comes in, we really try to sit down and align all of ourselves so that we make sure what it is the client wants and that we can make sure whether or not we can deliver that from a safety perspective, from a regulatory perspective. You know, sometimes there's some geopolitics involved, sometimes there's some taxation involved. But once those initial contacts are important for us to really determine, and what Jorge is saying about we work, it's working the private sector and the public sector working side by side to making sure that you get what you want. It's not Jorge stamping AOCs. No, it's the Department of Civil Aviation issuing these AOCs after an extensive process has been completed.
I think the kind of frustration that exists from a client's point of view, I think someone touched on it there, is with the crew about having an EASA license or an FAA license. Like I'm an accountant, I'm a chartered accountant, but there's also certified accountants. Does that mean one is better than the other? So it's a bit like, is it safe or not safe? Is it EASA or FAA? Does it matter? Like, I know why it matters, but I think from the client's point of view, I think that's where the frustration lies, and why isn't it the same across all registries?
If I can add to that, Graham, we are very proud of having also our San Marino AOC, and what was said about the plain English, you know, the making sense is an important part, and it shows also in our safety figures. If we do a survey if we just look at the facts on reporting, for instance, we have the best reporting rate and the highest reporting level in our San Marino operation. Why is that? Because it's small, it's nimble, it's reactive. Also, all of our post holders and even others in the team are very close to the San Marino registry and the team, and they feel happy to report. They feel happy to work together. They feel happy to improve, and that is really for us an important aspect and a good part of having our AOC there as well.
No, I appreciate that, and I think it's important that in the hands of a large, organised, well-structured operation, then you can rest assured that you're working in partnership. So how do you assure that the perhaps the more challenging, smaller operators who are struggling financially manage to retain the level of oversight that you would expect? Maybe one for Paul or David?
Yes, challenges come in various different guises. Certainly when we're starting our initial conversations with a company wishing to get an AOC, and this would have been in the UK as well as in San Marino, from my perspective, is that early engagement with the potential client. There are a number of factors that makes the business experience of getting an AOC successful. Quality at the beginning is very, very key. If anyone thinks that submitting a bad set of documentation to a regulator in the hope that it might get through and get an AOC out of that, and it may well be that, of course, no one's perfect, we're all human, that different registries will have different performance levels. And certainly I can answer from the UKCA and San Marino's perspective that if you're going to submit something that's of poor quality, you need to go and visit the pharmacy a few times because you're going to need some headache pills to get rid of the headaches you've just created for yourself. So quality at the beginning of the submission is a key factor. Not only just having somebody who can write documents, but who are the people behind those documents. The management team that are going to run an AOC is very key. Again, a high-quality, good-performing management team is going to not only provide you with potentially a much better business success, but it's going to present you a much better relationship with the regulator. So the competency levels, and of course the smaller you are, and especially if you're an initial startup, sometimes that can be a very big challenge. One, attracting the right people in at that stage of beginning an AOC can be difficult. If you're in a much more mature organisation that's already got a number of businesses around the world that it's got experience of, then it's a bit of an easier process. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to come without difficulties. Sometimes inheriting something from somewhere else, and the famous Microsoft copy and paste can in itself present some problems. And so it doesn't mean that the big company with a load of experience is not going to come to a new business setup and still have problems as well.
Thank you, David. I think the complexity of a fully commercial AOC, and I'm playing devil's advocate. I mean, I've set up an AOC in India, so I understand how complex it can be to get through the red tape, trust me. But obviously a lot of the registries are airline focused. And I think, a good example is Ireland, which was very much focused on 2 airlines, and then adopted the new registry, the EJ, which was something we worked on in the early days. But I think, would it be true to say that whether it's the Bermuda or T7, or Isle of Man or Jersey, that you're business aviation focused, which is why you can be more flexible?
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't have airlines in San Marino at all, so all the resources are focused on business aviation.
And do you ever envisage having airlines? Wizz Air, T7?
Maybe, yeah. I think we're open, of course, but 100% of our business is business jets, and this is what we concentrate on, and this is where is our expertise and
Because of course, Bermuda and Cayman went airline direction, hundreds of aircraft, obviously.
Exactly. For us, it's a bit of a challenge too, because we're a small territory. We don't have an airport, so for we can certify an airline, of course, but in order to certify an airline, the airline will have to be based in Rimini. We have an agreement with the Italians for the use of the Rimini airport. So whoever wishes to establish an aircraft in San Marino will have to be based in the Italian territory, which is also fiscality, Italian fiscality, and many other reasons. So also, I do foresee in the near future that there will be business opportunities, because I have already seen them, but not imminent.
Okay, well, we've got 5-6 minutes left, so we'll look at some of the questions, if we may. I think you've largely covered that just now, but one from Bernard, is flexibility another word for bending the rules? How would you? And I think that sort of has it's the elephant in the room. People go, well, if it's easy, it can't be as good.
My personal definition of flexibility as a registry and also being next to expert regulators is to be flexible. For me, it means that you need to have experience and you need to be competent to understand what the client is requesting, okay? And you need to be able to make safety assessments. You need to be able to make risk assessment. So this is where flexibility comes in, because it's very important that, like Paul said, on both sides of the table, that the operator itself, whoever is making any particular request, that they know exactly what they're asking, and the operator is able to react and say yes or no, or what is the acceptable means of compliance with that particular request.
Yeah, and the fact that we can have the communication lines between also with the civil aviation authorities are short, so we can have that discussion rather than to send a piece of paper into a place like the FAA and wait quite a long time before that come back. We can go and sit down, have the discussion about this SDC, look at it from all sides, and take a decision whether or not it's going to fly, yes or no.
In addition to what David and Lincoln just said, is the whole system has to be in sync. Not only the registry or the Civil Aviation Authority, the service providers as well. So when there is a certification process, we are in touch with the attorneys, we are in touch with the Ministry of Finance or Economics, so we're all on the same page. We're all talking at the same time. So that's part of having that flexibility. You're not dealing with added bureaucracy into the system, but we all call each other. Listen, we got an applicant. We got to do a certification package. So we're all asking questions and sharing the information, and sharing information among the team is important. And it's not only us. Like I said, it's the private industry, the service provider, the Civil Aviation Authority, the registry, and that's what makes it work.
Exactly. Just to add to what my father said, I mean, let's get a step backwards. I mean, we're talking about AOCs, but I think the first thing you do, you sell the jurisdiction. We're selling San Marino, we're selling Aruba. So like my father said, everyone is in sync, from the private industry, the lawyers, the accountants in the country, giving tax advice, legal advice. Everything is embedded into this decision making when it comes to choose for a San Marino AOC or choose for an Aruban AOC, okay? I may personally, with my experts, talk technical, okay? But then it's up to the lawyers, the accountants, the country itself, ministers, the politicians to sell the jurisdiction. So it's a whole team that is behind us, and that's why I think we are successful. I mean, being myself in San Marino now close to 13 years, and I really thank the government of San Marino, the support that they have been giving, the registry and the Civil Aviation Authority. It's really amazing, really, really amazing.
And I think it's important that in the 40 years I've been doing this, or longer, it's all about the operator taking responsibility for the operation. You facilitate that, you don't delegate it. We still, as an accountable manager, it is my responsibility to keep the operation safe and follow regulations. So you can make it easier only by being more responsive and faster rather than cutting corners. We have a question from George, who is doing his Brexit thing, even though he's got a Greek passport. I have an Irish passport, by the way. But as a result of the UK government's incompetence, and don't quote me, the UK registry is diminishing. I'm not entirely sure that's true, and are the registries feeding off the demise of the UK?
Let me answer that first, because I'm from the same wonderful organization, and thank you, George. It is. I think it's also again a matter of that flexibility. Actually, if we have a customer and we go to our San Marino operation, if it's NCC, we can do it in a week and a half. If it's AOC, depending on the type of aircraft, type of operation, we sit down with the authority, we discuss, we do a project plan, we have our team together, and it really is spot on the day that we agreed, like a couple of weeks before. But we're never left in the blind, it works. And I think that is the big issue that UKCA has today, if I understand well.
There's any other comments from any of the panel? But we have a UKAOC, which is, I have to say, our experience is pretty good, particularly in the nature of our operation, which is very much based within the UK in special missions, which I think we'll be talking about later. So we're gonna close on a question for Ireland. Can it grow as a jurisdiction for business aviation?
Short answer is yes, I suppose. I think from ACASS, we're lucky and we received the first San Marino AOC. I think if we recall ZCAS rather than ACASS, that might have been the case, but I think the point is that this felt potential in San Marino. That's the same for the Irish registry. Obviously it has free circulation within Europe and the UK, which is the only European AOC that does that, or registry that does that. Along with Ireland's benefits, a big aviation heritage, it's a good corporate structure, which makes it kind of attractive for financiers. And I just feel we're in there early. I think there's two well-known operators looking to join this year. And I think it'll grow with that, and I think hopefully we'll be front and center. So.
Very good. Okay, and on that note, I think unless there's any more questions. I didn't get to throw the rugby ball, which is a bit disappointing. No, it's okay. Later. We'll play with it in the bar. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.